Welcome everybody, my name is Chris Netto, and thank you for coming to the session of Beyond Good Enough. I'm going to give you a little bit of a primer on what you should be doing at home to create a home studio based on probably some equipment that you currently have now, things that have been left over from the pandemic, and we're going to take what you have and we're going to try to enhance it and allow you to do some content from your home and how that in today's world that's advantageous. But before I start, this is a session from IMCCA, so Mr. Danto is here from IMCCA. I want to give a little bit of a conversation piece on IMCCA. It is a nonprofit, technology-neutral company. It's focused on all multimedia and collaboration. I can go on and read the slides, or you can catch it yourself off this video. Or upstairs, if you stop by the IMCCA booth, you have it there. Okay? So that is the IMCCA. Please stop by, say hi. Carol's a very nice person. Be more than happy to help. My name is Chris Netto. I'm with Starin. I have been in this industry now since 1998. I'm doing this for a long time. Been in and around a lot of different things. I like to say that I have an MMA and AV. Everything from installation to manufacturer to consultant to end user, where I spent 13 years dealing with pain points that the end users have had. And along that time frame, I jumped into the social media space, made a name for myself by writing a couple articles, then get invited on a couple podcasts. Next thing you know, I have a chat on a Sunday morning that gets a pretty good number of impressions on a Sunday morning, called AV in the AM. If you're up early at 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, you're more than welcome to join. It's open to everybody. It's on Twitter, and I'm bringing it over to LinkedIn as well, slowly but surely. Mr. Danto does take it over to the Threads side if you feel so that day, but you more likely will see it on LinkedIn and on Twitter. Okay? So enough about that. Let's get into what's good enough, right? So in 2019, everybody got sent home with a problem. The problem was you weren't going back to your office. So how do you now communicate back to the world, right? And we are an AV company. And one of the things that we did not do very well pre-2019 was, for lack of a better expression, eat our own dog food. We would talk about it. We would sell it to you. We would talk and pitch the wonders of video conferencing for years. My first job out of college was ripping out old picture tel equipment and putting in, at the time, Polycom view stations. That's dating myself because that was connected to an ISDN, and those 4 letters in combination to you do not mean anything whatsoever anymore. And back then, it was impossible to think that you were able to do video on a phone at some point. So a lot of the predictions back then were wrong. Here we are. We are now in the video age, and now we're starting to move more into the conversation of video first. Why is video first important? It was the only thing that we could do during the pandemic that would connect us back to our coworkers, to our customers, to our families. If you did not know what Zoom was, you do now. If you do not know what Microsoft Teams is, you do now. And the reason why you know that, and the reason why I know that it's known, my mom, after 20 years, knows what I do for a living, finally. During the pandemic, she quoted, I will Zoom call you, Chris, and see how you and the kids are doing. So, yes, the college degree finally paid off 20 plus years, almost 30 years later, when she used the term Zoom and understood what I do. So now, in the UC space, there are a lot of brands, a lot of manufacturers that you could go out and purchase, and a lot of them are going to tell you that their cameras do the best. And to be quite honest, all of them do. They do their own special features, right? What separates them is their special sauce, and that's up to you for how you want to do your video conferencing. Now, what you have at home is not technically what you formerly had in a conference room, but I remember the day when a little USB webcam was put into a conference room on top of a 55-inch TV and told, that's good enough. So here we are. Part of that problem, too, is when you were sent home as an employee. If you had a laptop, if you were lucky enough to have a laptop in 2019, you probably had a built-in camera. That built-in camera worked for the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, maybe 4. And then they realized that that little webcam on your built into your PC was not good enough. And that term keeps coming up. In an industry where we can get by with good enough was not working for us anymore. Good enough means the sound is, it's loud enough, it's good enough. It's bright enough for a projector, it's good enough. It's big enough for that TV. We don't need to spend an extra $15,000 to get a 120-inch at the time, right? Whatever the commercial thing was. So good enough keeps coming up in our vocabulary and our vernacular quite often, but eventually good enough was not it. And the people that were working off their laptop computers, yes, you'll get by on a pinch, but when you needed to get onto a very important call, that's where you now had to have the external cameras. Cameras from Jabra, cameras from Bird Dog, cameras from PTZ Optics. A lot of different manufacturers out there are doing high quality cameras that would do things that you were not prepared for. What I mean by that, it allowed you to stand because they started moving and digitally chasing you in the room. So if you're an active speaker like myself who doesn't like to be pinned down to one place, I can stand up and actually have conversations, move my hands, the camera's moving. Now granted, was it perfect early on? No. Has it gotten better? Absolutely. What does that do? That led to people saying, you know what, I think the cameras are getting better, but my audio's not there. So people then started experimenting with external microphones into their PCs. There started a boom for companies like Shure with their USB XLR kind of hybrid microphones that came out at the time. Better quality microphones than you were getting off of your laptop. Better audio, better video. So where are we at today? Yes, you bought a camera. Cool, you got a nice Shure microphone and a nice Jabra camera that's now tracking you as you walk around. But there was something else missing. And one of the things that I would like to to teach you about on your studio is that you definitely have to start looking into the bigger picture of lighting and audio enhancements in your space. Why does that matter? Because if you are not the person who wants to spend $500 on a great camera, if you update your lighting, it could actually push the limits of your camera to look better. It's not going to look great, it'll look better. But if you have a great camera and you put in the better lighting, that is not fluorescent lighting, that doesn't make you look sickly, it will obviously work better with the camera, which will make you look better. It'll give you an HD quality, right? All that takes is a little bit of lighting. And there are companies out there like Elgato that make little tiny lights that you can control with the Stream Deck that will turn into, give you the proper K ratings or the lumens to lighten up your face. And lighting up yourself is not hard. You do not have to go to school like I did for it. It's just common sense. You're working with shadows, you're working with lights. Find what you think is comfortable. But one of the things that I would also go ahead and do at the same time, since you're looking at updating that kind of your lighting, look at backlighting. Backlighting is important because if you have backlighting, it will separate you from the background. In doing so, you have an interesting background. You can have a plain wall. If you take some LED colored lights and you flash them up against the wall, mix the two colors of red and blue, you'll get a purple hue at some point in between you. It just gives interest. You don't necessarily need to use the tools that are inside the Zoom and the Microsoft that are giving you blurs. But when you're blurring out a lighted background that actually looks better than just having that painting of, a sailor behind you or whatever it is that you may have at your house. So yes, lighting your background will push you forward and away from the background and do much better. Plus you have the lighting in front, which are now giving you key lights, which are highlighting your face. And that's important because that's what people pay attention to, right? Doesn't matter that your whole room's lit. You don't even have to do that. You can just have the lights focused on you, and you see that in a more cinematic look. You see that online with obviously, when people are doing one-on-one interviews on TV, it's cinematic lighting. It's not hard to do. Companies such as Logitech, for example, have now taken the box camera that was traditionally held for the security and broadcast space and have now created the box camera for the home in the Mevo. I think it's the Mevo, and don't quote me on that. What you're allowed to do with that is you can have the interchangeable lenses. Interchangeable lenses means better glass. Better glass means better video. With that better glass and better camera lenses on there, you now have the ability to put ND filters and all different types of filters on it that will naturally make you pop out. So it's crucial that you look at some of this stuff and decide, can I get by with a USB camera, standard camera that you can go to a local big box store and pick it up, or do you want to go to the next level? It's not as expensive as it used to be, and things have changed during the pandemic. Even the DSLR cameras or the mirrorless cameras that you buy at the big box stores all have the ability to come directly into your system, whether it's using a capture card or coming directly into your PC. And through experimentation, that's basically how I learned, because I had picked up a mirrorless camera right before the pandemic because I said, I am not going to tax the battery on my phone at these trade shows anymore. I'm going to get all my video, I'm going to put it onto an SD card, I'm going to shoot high quality mirrorless video with a 16 millimeter lens and an ND filter, and I'm going to grade it and do all this cool stuff. Yeah, 3 years it sat. What did I do? I turned that into my webcam. So when everybody else was kind of peeking through a little pinhole camera on their PC, I turned on my camera one day and got a reaction that, oh my God, what did you do? Because it looked different. It made me stand out, believe it or not. Those little things that you do at home with your home studio can make a hell of a difference, from changing the color of your background. It doesn't mean you have to repaint your office. But now you can add backdrop of a curtain, for example, and with some uplighting, now you have an interesting background that doesn't necessarily scream, I'm sitting in a room with no light. Light control is important, so if you have an office that has a lot of light, be careful with that. You may want to use that light to filter the morning light onto your face. That's a good time to kind of push the limits of your camera. What can it do? You have plenty of light, natural light on your face, that's awesome. What happens when the sun moves? So room darkening shades and that extra lights, like the key lights, are essential because it doesn't stay that way and lighting changes. You could be somebody who doesn't want to do that and control the light yourself. With that in mind, then maybe facing a window would not be the proper thing to do. So that's the tips that I kind of say on the home creation side on the video. As you start moving over to the audio side, audio is equally as important. A bad microphone is a bad microphone. I'm sorry, there's nothing really I could do to kind of make it sound better. But one thing you can do is treat the spaces that you're in to avoid some of the back echo and slap that will happen in a room that has maybe a lot of glass or a lot of hard surfaces. So one of the things that you may want to do is put some acoustic panels. Now, they're not the prettiest. If you're looking recording studio, man, old school was putting egg crates on the wall. You do not want to do that. That doesn't look good. But companies like Orlex make sound dampening room acoustic treatments for that, or you can go to other companies such as Elgato, who are making a very fancy looking kind of honeycomb shape panels that can treat the spaces and treat the walls so that you have a better sound. You can do this using those products, or you can DIY it, which is 90% of what I did at home. You can get curtains behind you, which will absorb the sound. You can put a bookshelf, which will deflect the sound, with books, not an empty bookshelf, I'm sorry. Try to avoid hard surfaces and try to put things on the wall that will absorb the sound. A carpeted room will sound different than a room that has hardwood floors. So maybe for the sake of audio, you do want to put a plush carpet on the ground just to kind of absorb that. I remember I did a project once at a pharmaceutical company, and somebody in the audience was there at the time when I had to deal with these fish bowls. There were a floating conference room, and the only way I can access the panels underneath was to get a high-low, go up 50 feet in the air, drop the metal panel to pull wire through, and the entire room was glass. It was a room that was done by an architect. The building was done by architects in D.C. By the name of Vignoli, who do a double helix design, and the entire building was glass. And to make the rooms private, they would do the electrostatic glass, right? It was an audio nightmare. It was a video nightmare. At certain points of the day, you were blown out, completely super bright, and at other points, the sun was behind you and you were in the dark and you couldn't see anything you're saying. Plus, your audio, 10 minutes in that room, just having a normal conversation, the echo, you would feel sick. We had to do something about that. That required a major, it required a major project, because basically we had to find something that would fit the architecture's details. At home, it's your home, please hang a rug, hang a blanket, do something just to get you that better audio. You don't have to go through the treatments that these folks had to do in order to keep the aesthetics of the room, which later on they claimed that it was never meant to be for video conferencing. Unfortunately, the group that moved into that building was all about video conferencing. So it's the pain points of the commercial world for the folks that are possibly listening to this on the residential space. So get the approvals from whoever is the homeowner. If you're working on a office system, the residential space, or the residential market understands the IT space very well for that space, right? You can get the high-end routers and do all the stuff that makes the office go good. But the one thing that I think the division where commercial can help is when it comes to the microphones, the cameras, and the lighting. This is not house lighting, this is studio lighting, right? And it's not a big difference. It's just the way you angle some of these lights and how you basically take the warmth and brightness of the lights. So it can be done by the average person. It'll be a lot better if it's done by somebody who basically can work with Lutron and say, hey, we need some sort of lighting that is directed towards this area where I'm speaking, right? That now is where we're at with audio and with video and with lighting. And you have a question?
Yeah.
Sure.
There are a lot of home content creators that are starting to show off their microphones.
Mm-hmm.
They specifically have,
Yeah.
boom arms and other things. And in many cases, I don't hear a difference. I certainly hear a difference between somebody who's using, a microphone built into a computer.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're using something built into a combination device or something sitting on the desk,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more for show than for audio.
Well, it's physics, it's science. If I move closer, it sounds better. If I move further away, it doesn't. Now, in the world of what we do on the commercial space, there could be a little bit of back and forth that the ceiling microphone is dying. The physical ceiling microphone is dying. And you may have written about that. We may have talked about that once before on a Sunday morning chat. Beamforming microphones are all the rage, right? You have them in the front of the room, they spill out, they grab everybody sitting in a space. How does that work in your house? I don't know if beamforming is for the space in the house, but it can work if you now are a mover, right? Those boom mics are great if you're positioned behind a desk with the microphone standing in front of you and you can talk, and that's great. The broadcast microphones are meant to block out noise, and they focus on you. If you talk into an SM7B, which sure makes broadcast beautiful microphone, there is a difference. There's warmth tones in microphones, and there are harsh tones. Broadcast microphones are kind of low. You have to kind of jack them up using a cloud lifter to make them sound a little bit more what you need on your PC, for example. But going into the broadcast side, it's a little different. We start trading into the spaces of the audio files, right? And the residential folks will be very much in tune with this kind of conversation. When it comes to the vinyl versus CD versus warm tones versus the audio and the sound, that's opinionated, right? But the boom microphones do help. It's not just for show. The better microphone, the closer the microphone, the better the ribbon, the better the quality microphone does work. Now, if you would have said to me, there are companies that are putting weights inside their microphone so that when you pick it up, it feels substantially heavier and it makes it feel like it's a heavy magnet and it's just a quality microphone, that's possible too. But those companies, where are you buying that off of? What boat's bringing you that from, 20 days later, 30 days later in shipment, right, and sitting in customs? I'm not going to point fingers and say, where they're coming from or what they're being done, but that does happen. Question?
Yeah, have you seen anything that helps with, short of buying a full-blown digital whiteboard of some kind, have you seen anything that helps with, the whiteboarding collaboration?
Yeah.
That's a pretty difficult one. It's nice to whiteboard, it's nice to be collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
But at home, it's sort of an awkward space.
There's plenty of products on the market right now that sit as a secondary camera on your wall, angled down, that can do that. Whiteboarding, it's tough. So Logitech makes the Scribe, which is an interesting product in that you can go ahead and write on it. It's the camera facing a wall. You can write on it, and it makes your hand disappear. That in itself is awesome because when you're seeing the whiteboarding happen on a separate screen, your hand is not in front of it, or you're not in front of it. That's pretty cool how they can do that using AI. That seems to be the most innovative thing I've seen so far. But whiteboarding is forever, it's still attached to your PC. If you're home and you're sitting at a desk, you know, you could still pull out the bamboo tablets that people had back in the day and kind of right along with that. It's
There was a great product that Smart made called the Smart Cap.
Smart Cap was a very interesting product.
That you could write on with a real marker, but then you have an application so you could share it with everybody else. Problem was the application couldn't get through corporate firewalls.
Yeah.
And Smart got creamed by Microsoft Surface coming out. I don't even think the product existed.
No, Cap, I don't think Cap is around, but it was an interesting product.
I don't think it matters. I don't think the whiteboard matters for the people that are going to be using stuff in the future.
No,
Digital anyway.
no, everything's in front of you.
It's like the bamboo is probably a better way forward because it's not, that's not collaborative. Like I love whiteboard cans and they're great, but that's a one-way communication. We're still
Yeah.
struggling with that.
It's,
She's in college. She doesn't even use a regular whiteboard. She's digital whiteboard.
yeah,
But like having an actual whiteboard in the room anymore doesn't even matter.
no.
Think about future. So just think about future generations. Like why are we building rooms for us? Think about future.
Because we're building rooms based on what we know from days gone past. And that's the problem in the commercial space right now, is that we have this romantic view of what things used to be and that they're going to return to that, and it hasn't. So if I'm going to go off topic and start talking about good enough in a different light, one of the things that has to be realized is that the return to office never happened the way it was supposed to happen. And one of the things that is still in play is that nobody can confidently tell you when that will happen because the leases are still in play. And once the leases are addressed in the next 5 to 10 years, then we'll finally see what the next iteration of work office is going to be. But right now, one of the things that is troublesome for, the light commercial and commercial folks that are doing installs in spaces is, oh my God, they're going to shrink their offices. They had 100 cubicles, they're going down to 20. And it boggles my mind how people are upset about that. We never, last I checked as AV integrators, we never made money off the cubicle. We sell to conference rooms and to meeting and huddle spaces. Interactive spaces are what's going to take over those missing cubicles, and that is good for us in such a good way. What's going to happen in the future is the speakers that were once reserved only for your museum pieces, where you wanted to stand in front of a painting and hear just the audio of the description of what that painting was. That's going to come into play into the big office spaces, which don't have walls. So your audio is going to be focused over you and that table, and that's it in a 6-foot radius. That's it. Those directional speakers are going to start making their way into the corporate space, right? Do you need that at home? Absolutely not. A good set of speakers or headphones will get you by with your home studio and the content you're creating, right? But in the commercial space, we need to look at that there's a bigger space and a bigger conversation, a bigger story yet to be told once the employees and the management of these companies come to the conclusion that it's the square footage is going to be square footage, and the use of that space is yet to be determined, but I doubt it's going to be in single-use desks going forward. Sorry. Go ahead. Question.
What are your thoughts on scrap all this, we're all in VR with our avatars?
That is, you can sell that. Yeah, that is a very, thank you for that one. That question actually is interesting because it's not my generation that's going to accept that. It may not be your generation, sir, that accepts that. But to the kindergartner who is currently sitting there learning shapes, colors, and sizes with VRs, maybe that is acceptable. Maybe that's acceptable to my 22-year-old son who lives in a Minecraft world, right, and builds and does things there. Those programs are very interesting because they have a very good, positive learning experience behind it. But those are being done. I'm not seeing that happening with the VR in a 20-something-year-old, as my son is right now. The younger generations, it's not going to be us that does that. So I don't want to answer that question, and nor do I want to even give you the wrong answer, because for what I can see, it could happen. But the problem that stops that, the biggest hindrance to that, is glasses. Yeah, it's something on your head. Trust me, if I could afford LASIK, I would not wear those. And you want me to wear a visor on my head to see another world? Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. I liked the concepts that were made early on with the kind of like see-through glasses, the Google Glass back in the day. The idea, the concept was great. It's just that execution was not right. It was not. We were not ready for that. Maybe today with something. Maybe what Apple's doing with their glasses. Maybe in the future. You know, Microsoft has a great product with their stuff, but it won't be for me. I honestly, I am so if you gave me a choice, Chris, how do you want to see these building plans? Do you want to step into the world of VR to do it, or do you want me to projector map it on the floor right here and walk through the space? I will take projector mapped on the floor, walking through my house plans all day, every day, twice on Sunday. Why? Because I'm a physical learner. I learn from books. I learn from writing, and I draw. I was an art major who couldn't handle computer-aided drawings. I needed to draw with the hand, with pen and with ink, and mistakes were things that I could fix, right? Computers that just wipe away, I would have to get creative with some of the mistakes that I did, right? So anyway, that's where, unfortunately, if anybody's going to tell you that that is the future and the future's here tomorrow, they're being a little extra, because I don't think that's necessarily true. The management, the people that are in power now, the Gen Z, the millennials, that are starting to move up in the world and started to have the conversations and become the bosses, if they're not the bosses already, because Gen X got skipped over. You know how that is, right?
Yeah.
No.
Still trying to claw my way up.
That's it. It's tough. It's tough. So the young generation has a different perspective on technology that we do, right? They're digital natives. I don't like referring to that, but to an essence, so are the Gen Xers who kind of grew up with the first video games, and they weren't board games, right? And I got sent to work at 13. My dad's like, you're going to go work with your cousin folding boxes. You're not going to play Super Mario Brothers on this NES all summer. So it makes sense to some folks. Going back to the content creation, one of the toughest things that we have right now, one of the bigger questions that comes with content creation is the battle over how you're going to put that online. I can create the greatest content, and I can make it really nice. There are programs out there now currently that allow you to edit in AI. You don't have to hire a freelancer, right? And if you do want to hire a freelancer, there are companies and websites like Fiverr that will do it for you for nothing. And I've shared that secret with many people. It will make it happen, right? But one of the biggest battles that is out there right now is how you're going to display that content, right? Vertical versus portrait versus landscape is a constant problem. Even on sites like LinkedIn, the algorithm looks at those very differently. Whether you're putting them in a portrait versus landscape, it sees it differently. It treats it differently. So you have to be aware of that. This is where yes, I'm a tech by trade and I came up through tech, but this is where my social game comes into conversation. I get into more battles with people over algorithms that the websites are doing and how to the marketing folks. For example, we're going to send it out through here and we're going to put it out using this program. Yeah, when it hits those sites, the X's, the threads, the Instagrams, they're looking at every little thing, that even how it is recorded and put up on video. So you have to be aware of that. And for people that want to record in 8K, great. You don't need an 8K camera. Most of the sites are not going to do more than 1080p. If you can get 4K onto YouTube, great. Do you need to do that, or are you now just creating extra bandwidth? It's a talking head, right? So there are some things that need to be thought of when you're creating content with those spaces and those cameras that you have. I say, buy the camera. If it does 4K, get it, because 4K is not stopping. And there is a whole movement to bring 8K into the conversation. The only thing stopping that is the amount of bandwidth that it takes to run that. Outside of that, if you're going to leave here today with one, thought, what you have from 5 years ago is not good anymore. It's not even good enough. You can update today to a camera that does much better quality video, and the processing and the algorithms and everything that goes into the AI that goes into these cameras is going to make it's going to make you look better, unfortunately, right? We all want. The only thing it doesn't give those cool Snapchat filters that make us look 30 years younger. Outside of that, it will do just about anything, and I'm sure that there's cameras out there that will. But in closing, good enough is not acceptable. Good enough has not been acceptable for a few years in the home office space. What you have currently may be outdated. The chips that are going into the sensors that are being used in these cameras are being updated exponentially. Moore's law got thrown out the window with some of these chipsets as they're moving along. So please look at that. The newer cameras are going to do a lot of better, faster things. If you want to be vintage, please do. Go get yourself a 35 millimeter film camera and do that, but it's not going to get you anything that you want to do today. And just remember that anything you can do on those vintage cameras for that warm look, like the folks that like the vinyl, you can go ahead and there's a filter for that. There used to be an app for that, now there's filters for that. So my hope is that you start looking beyond the cameras that you currently have, look into upgrading your camera from a USB to a newer USB camera, USB-C camera. That would be a first hint that it's kind of modern versus USB 2.0. Look for glass. Glass is hard for me to sit here and tell you that one camera company is going to use better glass than the other. That only comes into really play into the conversation when you start looking at the photographic cameras and film cameras. But you have every right to ask any company that's selling you a camera, tell me about your glass, if it's good, if it's bad, right? And just be aware that you have digital pan, tilt, zoom as much as anything else. And those things can get wonky, and they can go flying through the room and do all sorts of weird things. So don't rely too much on that until you're super comfortable with it, or you set the parameters, because a lot of these cameras have the software companion that rides with them that allows you to kind of set, hey, I'm in this space, don't go all over looking, or focus on me. A lot of companies have put a lot of time and money and investment into the programming that goes into these cameras to make them track you better, to sound better, to look better, backlight compensation. Those are things that we've been doing for years. Now digitally, these things are thinking, right? They're anticipating moves, and with the advent of AI getting brought into these cameras, I think it can only get better, right? This is not Terminator stuff. This is just straight up, the cameras are following you. I can't comment on anything else after that, but that was it. Is there any more questions regarding Good Enough? I hope the presentation was good enough. It was okay. My name's Chris Netto. I am with Starin. If you want to find me on the socials, I'm at Chris_Netto on X, to somebody's dismay. I'm on LinkedIn, Christopher Netto, CTS. I do use the last 3 letters of the IMCCA thing because I still carry that designation for now. But thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for being a part of the Good Enough conversation. And I hope that you move past good enough onto better. Thank you.